And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing ice down very close to St. Paul Island there, but not quite reaching, especially the heavier ice, still a few miles off to the north and northeast. But with the south winds in there and expected to increase tonight and tomorrow, that'll tend to push that back to the north a little bit. And for the tonight's forecast, this is the low and the southwest winds are associated with it that'll begin to push the ice back to the north a little bit, otherwise drying out here in the southwest part of the state. Another front grazing the western Aleutians, a little bit of moisture there. Diminishing snow to a certain extent, but persisting along this trough axis in the interior tonight, and extends areas of light snow and snow showers, extend the entire length there across the state near that trough axis. Dry to the north, mostly dry to the south. Risk of a few snow showers here in northern Cook Inlet into the Susitna Valley tomorrow. Otherwise dry for the southeast coast as this system stays down to the south through Thursday and is actually down off the Washington coast by Thursday afternoon. Remnant, though, of a little bit of shower activity possible over toward Hyder and Stewart. Otherwise, pretty nice there for the southeast coast. Light winds over all interior Alaska now, even the eastern Arctic coast, seeing a drop off in those winds with scattered snow showers across much of the area there. But the southern areas could see some sunshine for a period there ahead of this system before it comes rolling on up in toward the latter part of the week, or actually later Friday and Saturday. Otherwise, gale force winds and rain for the Alaska Peninsula. Coastal water forecast, south coast, north to northeast winds of 15 knots. Central coast, north to northeast at 10 knots, and north at 10 for the north coast. Inside waters, northerly winds 15 knots with seas 3 to 6 feet. And then the outlook for Thursday, Lynn Canal north at 20. Stevens Passage down to Clarence Strait northwest at 10 to 15 knots. South coast, northeast winds 10 to 15. And kind of a northerly wind here for the central and north coast at about 15 knots. Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast for Wednesday, light variable winds with seas anywhere from 3 to 4 feet off the coast here and about 2 feet in the Sound. Barren Islands northwest at 20, Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories, west winds at 25 knots, variable winds at 10 for Cook Inlet. And that continues into Thursday, variable winds for Cook Inlet about 10 knots, westerlies 20 knots, Kamishak Bay and the Barrens, and light variable winds from the North Gulf Coast, as well as Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, west-northwest, 15 to 20 knots in store for Wednesday, southwest at 15 for Bristol Bay, south 15 here for the Alaska Peninsula. And for Bristol Bay, east winds at 20 knots now for Thursday. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots there. And variable winds 10 to 15 knots for the areas around Kodiak Island. And for the eastern Aleutians, south to southeast winds at 20 tomorrow. Adak and Atka, east winds at 15. And the western Aleutians, east-southeast at 15 to 25 knots. And then for Thursday, north to northeast winds here for the western Aleutians, 30 to 35 knots. Central areas looking at east-northeasterlies at 25 to 30 knots. And southeast winds 20 to 30 knots here for the eastern Aleutians. Southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, all looking at a southeast wind tomorrow at 20. Pribilof Island, south 25 knots, seas 9 feet, northeast 25 for St. Matthew Island. And for the Thursday outlook, small craft advisories and brisk wind advisories here for St. Lawrence Island, all of the southwest coast. Southeast winds 25 knots, east 25 for the Pribilofs, east 25 St. Matthew Island, and east at 20 for Norton Sound. Eastern Beaufort Seacoast tomorrow, gale warnings, east winds 35 knots, brisk wind advisories for the central and western Arctic coast, east at 30 for the Chukchi Sea, kind of variable winds at 15 knots. And mostly east or east-southeast here for the Chukchi Sea on Thursday, but pretty light, 5 to 15 knots. Much lighter winds up here in the Arctic coast, especially the west side there, southwest at 5. Winds coming down to 15 knots on the central coast and 25 to 35 knot easterlies, all in a diminishing mode throughout the day for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.